Internal experiences are a crucial part in the maturing and self-realization process, so it is essential to explain them in detail. As we said in the previous episode, internal experiences are those we come to know by overcoming our ego challenges driven by fears. For example, suppose we get fired because of passive behavior, and through that experience we learn how to be proactive. If that happens, we comprehended new experience from the negative experience of being fired. The same applies, for example, to our selfishness. Let's say we act selfishly in our marriage and our partner asks for a divorce. Divorce is irrelevant. It only serves as a trigger for the elimination of our essential limiting behavior. This can drive us to suffering or encourage us to go on a path of change and perhaps save our marriage. Whenever something bad happens to us, it is only up to our perspective how we will react. In reality, the right path is to ask only one question: what do I need to learn and overcome from this situation? Mistakes and negative experiences can be a golden ticket to reaching your full potential. They don't make you a victim, they are here to become your teacher. However, we can freely choose not to become aware of passivity or selfishness as our internal stumbling block. We can ignore the challenge our ego puts in front of our maturation. If that's the case, similar negative experiences will repeat. It is easy to understand. If you are selfish, delusional, or full of fear, it will manifest in all aspects of your life, from relationship to health and internal satisfaction, until we learn what needs to be learned. Here, it is important to be aware of the truth that human growth and development are not linear, because our souls do not mature solely by the passage of time, but through our decisions, actions, and experiences. However, along the way, we encounter our greatest teacher, the ego. The ego represents our false identity that we have mistaken for the truth and is shaped by our effort to adapt to the environment. And here's the biggest paradox. On the one hand, we, our souls, have a natural need for growth and development, research and gathering experience. On the other hand, we have also a natural ego-driven fear of change. Although we are all aware that only constant is change, the fear of change is also our biggest fear. The louder our ego is, the more strongly we are paralyzed by fear. It holds us prisoner and makes us more hesitant to take the path that we know is right and that will lead us to clarity. This is where the meaning of internal experiences is hidden, facing ego-driven fears and making purposeful changes to reach emotional maturity. This will enable us to realize the true value of love, which is possible only if we follow the truth. Because the truth is the only way. It enables transformation, and it is the one that tells us sincerely how much we know or how much we are ready to learn about ourselves. It also refers to our fear-driven beliefs, desire, selfishness, ignorance, and unwillingness to take responsibility. It also shows us attachment to material things or ideas we use to get confirmation of our worth. But truth is always the middle way. Harmony and balance. The path that stretches between self-love and love for others. However, only a few manage to live up to this ideal. This depends on our maturity that is defined by our motivation, if we are governed by ego or love. The answer to that question will determine what is important to us, whether we see value, and consequently it will define our reality and our maturity. Unfortunately, the truth often remains buried by our ego and with a reason. We identify with our ego so much that we believe it is all that we are. This causes all the suffering that we also believe is inevitable. However, the ego is here to teach us something, not to harm us. Nonetheless, it will do its best to remain hidden so that we don't recognize it and silence it. Like any good teacher, the ego wants to be overcome by its students. We will succeed in this by first recognizing its manifestations. Manifestations or consequences, like experiences, can be internal or external. Internal manifestations can be under the influence of the ego and cause physical and psychological suffering, state of ego. Or they can be under the influence of love and bring us peace, happiness and gratitude, state of love. Narcissism or lack of self-esteem, two extremes of the state of ego, are examples where the ego dominates our lives. If we solve the ego challenges hidden behind these traits, the reward will be true self-respect, that is state of love. On the other hand, if we don't overcome our ego, its manifestations will not only happen inside us, it will be reflected externally in all aspects of our lives, especially the ones we are the weakest at. Just like the weakest organs are the first to suffer when attacked by illness. Ego-driven fear will manifest itself in work, social and love relationship, family and health. If you are not satisfied with any of the above, be aware that your ego is responsible for it and not external circumstances. If your partner leaves you for the third time, you may have to overcome the fear of loneliness or change. If you get a headache, you may have to overcome the selfishness and nervousness that comes along. If we overcome the ego and mature, it will manifest itself positively in all aspects of our lives. And to silence the ego, we must become aware of ego challenges behind our manifestations. That starts with a crucial question: why? Answer to that question will reveal motivation and all the ego challenges. Challenges, as well as manifestations and experiences, can be internal and external. The internal ones are driven solely by the ego. It is important to emphasize that dominance of the ego and its influence on our lives are in no way related to how smart we are. Smart people can be indecisive, procrastinate, and be consumed by fear and doubt too. This happens because they are not focused on their own maturation by following the truth. They do not tackle the traps ego sets in front of them. Instead, they remain paralyzed under the influence of attachment, expectations, selfishness, and doubts. It is precisely this paralysis that prevents us from discarding familiar patterns that do not bring us fulfillment, but bring us predictability and a comfort zone. It's so stopping us from gaining a clarity into how life works. It also stops us from putting ourselves on the clear path of transformation from surviving to creating. There are also external challenges. Those are all the challenges in which we find ourselves during our lives. They are here to help us overcome the internal challenges of the ego. For example, if we feel terrified of failure, we shouldn't be surprised if we always experience failure. Such experiences will happen to us regularly until we overcome that fear. That's why we shouldn't look at repeating unwanted experiences as a sign of bad faith, but as a new opportunity to become aware of our fears. And our emotional intelligence is the way to deal with these inner ego fears. Key components of emotional intelligence, awareness, conscience, and courage are the key to solving ego challenges and ego fears. It also helps us to solve the traumas and lack of experience hidden behind ego fears on our way of comprehending our internal experiences. Awareness is responsible for recognizing the ego, our conscience for recognizing the truth, and our courage for following our path. For example, an unaware person will say, "No, I don't know I'm doing anything wrong. I'm not aware of that." A person without a conscience will conclude, I know I'm doing wrong, but I don't care. And those without a lack of courage will say, I know what I'm doing and I know it's wrong, but it's too hard for me to change. It is extremely important to note that the lack of any component of the emotional intelligence is a challenge in itself because they are all superior to ego challenges and fears. And when we overcome our ego, we will truly learn the skill of love, creation and selflessness, giving and sharing. And when we master the skill of love, we will gain clarity. Clarity is the reward for fulfilling the meaning of life, self-realization. Just like the two worlds and just like challenges, manifestations and experiences, clarity can also be internal and external. Internal clarity brings a complete knowledge of ourselves because it takes a lot of knowledge and maturity to understand the freedom that comes with letting go our own beliefs. Even more maturity is needed to see how much courage is needed for true love. Only a few will feel true gratitude and motivation that comes with it, and thus start path of finding and fulfilling their own purpose in life. We finally sit in the driver's seat of our life and nothing can influence us anymore. External clarity is spirituality. Clarity about a higher power. It communicates with us in a non-verbal manner and sets upon us challenges by helping us to overcome the internal ego challenges. It loves us so much that it does not have any expectations. It only offers us help in starving our ego and feeding our souls. My name is Zoran Salopek, and in next episode we will discuss emotional maturity and intelligence.